sorry to continue really late, but this is part 2 of learning principles. We are going to see behavioral contrasts and intrinsic motivation. So once you have identified a stimulus as a reinforcer, that determines how effective the reinforcers will be. So which aspect of it will determine how effective or how driven this reinforcer will be in the whole process. Some reinforcers are of course more powerful than other reinforcers. For instance, a cat would respond better to its food than something else like a toy. However, what counts as large or small, it depends on the context and the presenter, that is the cat in this scenario. So for instance, we can take the example of a rat that is used to getting 60 pellets for response. If you want to give, let's say, 10 pellets to the rat, it will seem very little for the rat, and the animal will respond weakly because you're giving the animal a very puny reward, right? So, but if the cat is just getting used to just 4 or 5 pellets, and you give him or her 10 pellets, then it'll obviously be like a feast, right? So the response will be fast and will be stronger. So in the effectiveness of the reinforcer, it will largely depend on what is the reward and when it is available also. So the effect is called as behavioral contrast. Like for instance, if you have starved a rat in this scenario, which is very inhuman, but still, then the response will be highly contrasting. If the rat is well fed and when you try this, the effect will be more or less the normal effect of it. Applications of operant conditioning. This type of physical guidance is one example of a prompt. A prompt is any stimulus that makes the desired response more likely. Like take the example of prompting of dialogues in movies. So whenever the hero or heroine forgets the dialogue, there will be a prompter who's just in the kilo they will prompt that the response. Whenever a prompt is used, it's usually withdrawn gradually, known as fading. So this again the example of heroines in movies. For instance, a heroine who is coming from a North Indian background who doesn't understand the South Indian language. Is first few years they'll use prompting. After a few years, the prompting will stop, and hopefully they won't use prompting because they're getting used to the language. And this gradually getting rid of the prompt is called as fading. So in this, if you see, prompting is a very good application of operant conditioning. Second is token reinforcement. You know how in children you give them a symbol or a badge or a chocolate as a to notify them they've done something good, right? So this is called a token. So this can be used in school to shape the behavior of students. That is, you know, when we were in kindergarten, we used to have these little stars. I used to have it in my notebooks if I write really well without a mistake. So that star is a token. So the next topic we'll be looking at is organizational behavior management. That is, there is a behavior analysis technique that is devoted to the application of the behavioral principles in behavioral psychology, of course, to improve performance. It could be in workplace or corporates or schools, colleges, everywhere. So this is what we call as behavior management, which can be applied again with respect to application of operant conditioning used in workplaces. So yeah, let's see what are the positive negative reinforcement. This is something that's very confusing. What is positive, what is negative reinforcement, what is punishment? Positive reinforcement is a desirable stimulus that's given to add the onset of a behavior. Negative reinforcement, an undesirable stimulus is removed to increase a behavior. That could be negative reinforcement can be the example for negative reinforcement can be seat belts. For example, this annoying beep sound that you get, beep beep beep, that you get when you take off your seatbelt and when you're not wearing your seatbelt, that is a negative reinforcement. So you buckle up, so you stop the annoying sound, right? So negative reinforcement is also used in many animal training, especially with respect to horse riding. So these riders, they pull the, squeeze the legs, or like they pull the reins, then remove the pressure when the horse starts running faster as they want it to be. The pressure is the negative stimulus. The that the horse wants to do, right? Now we'll go see punishment. Continuing with punishment. Punishment, many people get confused between negative reinforcement and punishment, but please remember this example I gave you about the car seatbelt. So what happened in the car seatbelt and the bill? I also have another example of that I remember that my professor gave me is headache. Headache, upper when we take medication. Medication is a negative reinforcement to get rid of something that is undesirable for the person, right? So this is how I remember my negative reinforcement. Please remember the example for you to not get confused with punishment, because the car seatbelt beep is not a punishment, but it's just negative reinforcement for us. Many people confuse that, but they are very different, and like I said, it's very important to remember the applications for us to remember the concepts better. Whereas in a negative reinforcement, if you ask me what is the difference, negative reinforcement, it will take away something undesirable from you, whereas punishment will take away something, will decrease the probability of an undesirable behavior rather. So it always decreases the behavior. In punishment also we have two types. There is positive punishment, negative punishment. Positive punishment is just a reprimand or scolding a child to decrease a behavior. For instance, one of my professors always used to scold me in class because I constantly used to sleep in his class. So that is a positive punishment. Whereas a negative punishment, you remove a pleasant stimulus to decrease the behavior. For instance, taking away iPad when a child misbehaves, taking away a favorite toy when the child misbehaves is something. So the stimulus is removed from the environment. That is a negative punishment. So positive punishment is giving something, adding something, whereas negative punishment is taking something away. So they always say you have to give an immediate punishment for you to understand the association that behavior is what is getting punished. So this whole concept of suppression, that is to decrease the frequency of a behavior, that came into play, and it became a little popularized around when they started doing punishment related researches. Reinforcement produces an increase in whatever behavior that we follow, whereas punishment decreases the specific behavior. That is the difference between punishment and reinforcement. What are the factors that influence effectiveness of punishment? First of all, a disclaimer: punishment does not work better than reinforcement, which is scientifically proven. I will also give you an explanation about it, but I wanted to say before we get into punishment oriented topics. So what are the second factor is how intense the introduction is. If the punishment is introduced in a intense manner, the effect will be higher. The third is schedule of punishment. At every occurrence, it needs to be consistently presented for the person to associate. Fourth is motivation to respond. The effectiveness of punishment procedures is inversely related to the intensity of the subject's motivation to respond. For example, if a child doesn't really want to give up on the iPad time, then it is very easy, then it's not very easy for the punishment to take effect on. Or if the child is just very not very intensely attached to the iPad, it's easier for the punishment to take effect. Fifth one is the reinforcement of alternative behavior. That is, punishment is much more effective when an individual is provided with an alternative way to obtain the reinforcer. The last point is, besides having aversive property, punishment can also function as a discriminative stimulus. That is, a signal predicting the availability of another alternative. That is, for instance, self-injurious behavior often bring the individual a lot of sympathy, attention, and aversive aspects of response, pain, that serves as a discriminative stimulus that reinforcement is eminent. So, for example, there is one other aspect that is available for the person to explore in case of a punishment. Then this, the effect of the punishment is eminent. That's what we would say. We will continue the disadvantages of using punishment in the next video.